Welcome to the rice fields, mother.
Drop it.
All right, welcome to part 4 of this CBR Swapped Grom build series, mini series. Just recording myself. If you just found this video somehow, you clicked a link on Facebook, someone shared it to you. We are taking my 2024 Honda Grom SP, which is a sticker and rim package, people. It's not what all those Groms are called. And we're putting a CBR300R motor. She's in there, she's mounted. So I've gone over so far, episode 1 was the parts. Part 2 is we stripped this bike completely down to a roller frame. Part 3 was cutting the frame, welding the frame, installing the motor and the brackets. And this episode, we're doing all the wiring, the tedious stuff. So we're using a CBR300R wiring harness. You can use a CBR250R wiring harness. You can use a CB300F wiring harness. From my experience, donor bikes, the CB300R, CB300F, CBR300R, CBR250R, even the CRF250. If the bike doesn't come with LED headlights originally, those are the wiring harnesses that are the easiest. All my adapters will work with all those bikes if they do not have the LED headlight from factory. That's just because I haven't been able to test a CB300R LED wiring harness. Those bikes just aren't around here, so I never find them as donors. But whatever wiring you choose, make sure you get the matching hand controls. You need those to plug in because the Grom ones don't work. I'm working on adapters for the Grom ones, I just haven't had time. But everything you need for wiring, all the random gizmos and gadgets, the link to the Facebook group, there's a pinned post that has a list of everything you need. So I don't have to just ramble on here. But in this episode, we're going to show you how to, hook up this wiring on the bike. All my adapters to make all the factory stuff work, like the taillight and the dash and the fuel pump. I'm going to show you how I run the wiring. There's many different ways to run the wiring. I run it a certain way. It's always worked. I've done about 4 or 5 of these 22 and up Groms. And I've changed it a little bit every time, but for the most part, it's been the same route. But I'll go over all the plugs we're using on this harness. This harness I'm using, as I hit myself in the face, is a CBR300R harness. I don't know if I've said that in this video. But I've used this harness specifically on my OG swap, my SF swap, and now on my 24 Grom swap. So she's been used, she's been abused, she's been modified many times. And it's much shorter, you'll see when I install it, than the harness you're using, but that's okay. You can fold it, bend it like I did this one. Our end goal for this is to get the fuel pump to prime when we turn the key. That means pretty much everything is correct. All the wiring is hooked up properly as I trip. And yeah, that's it. All right, so we're going to go over the wiring real quick just to get you familiar with it. This is our starter relay. It has a separate wire that goes to it, which is a black wire, which is already on the bike. So this goes to the starter, and this end goes to the other part of the relay. My motor just came like that. Usually it's connected already. But we're going to start with just identifying all the plugs to make it a little easier for you. We'll start in the back. This is the back of the harness. This is where all this mumbo-jumbo is. So first things first, obviously fuse box. Just got to stuff that in somewhere. This 2-pin plug here is the tail light. This is your brake and your ground. All these little bullet plugs here are going to be your ground wires. So there is a single green ground with a dual plug here for your bullet connectors. That is for your signals. There is a brown wire with a dual bullet plug. That is for your running light wires. So your running tail light and your license plate light. Our adapter will plug into these two to convert it to the Grom taillight plug. The orange one and the blue wire is your rear signals. And there's another ground wire here you can use for whatever you want. Moving down, we have more relays. Just got to tuck those away. This is your diagnostic port. Keep moving down. The next bundle of wires here. This is your main harness ground. And this is your rectifier plug. Going over here. This is your starter relay plug, which plugs into that. These two black Billet female connectors. These are your rear brake light. The next one is your ECU plug. If we keep going down, this bundle of wires is going to be your kickstand switch, your stator, your neutral sensor switch, stuff like that, your speed sensor. If we keep going down, the white plug is your fuel pump. Next bundle of wires is the 5-pin throttle position sensor on your throttle body with our adapter already on it. The triangle plug that's gray is your coolant temp sensor. This plug here is your tip sensor. Gray plug here is your injector. This plug that I've extended with our adapter is the idle sensor, idle valve. This plug here on this going up is our ignition or our coil. It'll have a clear boot and a black boot. I have an extension on it just to make it reach. This big 9-pin plug here is our signal relay with a TST LED relay pigtailed on. I've had this for 3 years now. I now make a plug and play adapter to use your Grom LED relay if you have one, or you can purchase it with an LED relay. Here are more relays. Moving up, this is going to be probably the one most important plugs. We have our hand controls, which is the brown plug, the black plugs. Those are left and right hand controls. And this 3-pin right here is our ignition. We have an adapter to convert this to the Grom ignition, so you can use your Grom key. Moving up here, this is our horn. Moving up to the very top, this is the dash plug. This is the CBR dash plug. We make an adapter so you can convert this plug and play right into your Grom dash. And this black plug is for your headlight harness. I don't have it hooked up here, but we sell a Grom headlight harness to convert the 3-foot, it's literally this long, the headlight harness on the CBR. We convert it to be about 6 inches, and it will have your front signals and an H4 plug. So it was plug and play for OG Groms. To run the SF headlight, you would also need our SF headlight adapter, which will convert all the voltages and wattages, or our SF headlight, which is already converted to H4. And to run the 22 and up headlight, you would need to send in your OEM headlight so we can convert it to 12 volts, and it will be plug and play with our H4 headlight harness that you can get in our kit. So we sell a full package of plug and play adapters for this entire harness, so you literally don't have to do anything but plug it in. That is on our website. Makes life super easy. But the first thing we're going to do is, before we mount the harness, I always like to start with mounting the rectifier. So this is where the OEM ECU was mounted with a bunch of brackets and shit. Get rid of all those brackets, and we mounted the rectifier right here. It's solid, it's not going anywhere. The less vibrations this has, the better. You don't want it to bounce around in there. That's where the center of the harness is going to start. Well, that's where I start the center of my wiring. And from there, we're going to run the main harness up the underneath and then down the side of the frame here. And we want the headlight part of the plugs and the controls to barely stick past the forks here, so we have room for the headlight. All the taillight stuff will run through the other side. So all the other wiring will come right through here and will run right up here. I believe I'm going to put the signal or the starter relay in this area. Before I had it mounted in the trunk, but I'm going to try to leave the trunk area empty and see what I can do. But I'll have this mounted here. Our brake res isn't going to be here. We have a custom one we're putting in. All right, so that's the gist of the wiring. I'm going to mount the camera. I don't know how I'm going to edit me doing this wiring, but I'll try my best to make it as easy as possible. I'm out of breath from talking too much, and I'm fat, you can tell. So let's get to it. So this is the tail light end of the harness. We're going to shove this through. All right, so most of what we need is through. What I have running back towards me, so obviously the ECU plug here. The ECU is going to mount, usually I mount it in here somewhere. All our plugs for by the sprocket, the stator, neutral, everything. The white plug for the pump, fuel pump, is running back through. And then on the other side, so the other side here, we have our rear brake wires through. We have our relays, our fuse, all our taillight signals stuff run through. Our starter relay is through. Our ground wire here, which the ground we're going to hook to the factory location on the Grom, which is right here. And that's all the plugs right now that we have through here. So I'm going to go ahead and wire in that ground, and then we'll run the taillight wiring up. So we're going to put our starter relay right here. Our battery wires will run right up into the trunk area, like that. And we're just going to zip tie this right here. There's a nice little bolt thing there. So the other wire that goes to this is on your starter. If your motor came like this, your donor. So there's a wire that bolts to your starter, which is the negative that goes to the other side of this post here. So we're going to run that up. Probably going to run it under the frame, on top of the motor, through the back here, and then we can mount this up. Which will run actually pretty perfect right here. And our plug, which is this red one, we'll plug in. You'll hear it clip. That. Put the boot back over the top, and this will sit pretty well right there. The battery wire will come up here to the positive. Our negative wire will run down back through here and bolt it to where our factory ground is on the Grom. All these plugs, the diagnostic port and our tail light stuff, we're going to run, and we're going to leave it right on the other side of this relay here. Right here. This will be mounted behind the panel here, so we don't have to worry about it. We will zip tie this though together, and the starter relay will zip tie down to the frame. So that's it for this side pretty much. We're going to run the coil wires over here though. We'll snake those through the top. To get the ground wire here to fit, I did have to bend this bracket forward more. All the previous ones, I've always used that little slot here where the evap canister was. This time I didn't use it. I bent the tabs forward though to give the wire a little extra wiggle room so it won't rub. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's go to the other side now. So this side is the wiring mess. This side is usually the tricky side. First, we're just gonna move you so you can see everything I'm doing here. Put you over here. So our end goal is to have the end of this just poking out of here. So if we do that, you can see it's barely poking out. That's perfect. So if you wanted to start your harness having the front here and zip tie the wiring, I usually zip tie it to this little tab here, and then you can figure out how you want to bend it, fold it to get it all the way in where you want it tucked. The more you have this tucked, the easier it is to service, work on the motor, do whatever you need to do, because the CBR wiring is very long compared to the previous Grom wiring you had on here. Here's our coil wire, so we have to snake that through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip tie this first, and then we'll work on tucking and running these wires where they need to be. And you will go through zip ties like you wouldn't believe, because you'll zip tie it, find a new spot, unzip tie, re-zip tie, so don't get too obsessed with zip ties till you have everything wired. So that's our front wire. I also have it up under the wire, our fan. I forgot to show that in the harness. This is for the fan, and our horn here, which we're not gonna have to need these extensions on this bike for the way they run the harness, so we'll get rid of those. So these are our signal relay. I usually just tuck this somewhere, hide it underneath, fold it. You don't want it to get wet, but you don't ever need to access it. Same with the relays here. We're just going to tuck these under the tank. Try to tuck them under the tank. Fail miserably. This is our coolant temp sensor. We can plug that right in. I have an extension if yours doesn't fit. It's better to just get the entire package, because most of the time none of these will reach, and it's much easier to just have everything plug and play. Here's our injector. I've hard extended this, but we have plug and play adapters. Plug that in. So this is our throttle position sensor plug with our adapter on it. We're going to fish this over to the other side because the throttle body is on that side. So we'll go underneath the main harness here, the way the plug is. Right through like that, let it dangle. This is our tip sensor. We're running Aracer, so we don't need this plugged in, which I'm not going to plug it in, but we can just tuck it away, forget about it, forget that it even exists. We don't need it. If you're running an OEM ECU, you got to make sure you have all the original sensors plugged in, so the tip sensor, the neutral sensor, the clutch sensor, and your original O2 sensor. You got to have all that plugged in for the OEM ECU to work. When you're running Aracer, half that stuff is not required, so the computer doesn't know it's there. You don't need to even use it, which is nice. This is our 4-pin. This is the idle control valve on the throttle body. We sell a manual idle control valve, so we're not going to be using this. We're not going to plug this in, but for testing, we'll run it over to the other side. I'm missing the gray plug inside though. If you have idle problems, the most common thing is when you're coming to a stop, your idle will hang until you let the clutch out a little bit, or if you run backfire and Aracer, the manual idle control valve cures that, so you don't need to run backfire to fix it, or let your clutch out, obviously. So we're going to sneak this over here. Like so. That helps tuck that wire up there, which is nice. ECU is there. All these plugs I will stuff into here and zip tie to the frame bracket. But we're going to plug these in. So this plug that looks like your taillight plug, we're going to run under the frame through the bracket. This is our speed sensor. So we're going to plug that in. Move you over here, a little easier to see. And then we have our stator plugs here, which are a 6-pin plug with only 3 wires. That's fantastic. These are our stator plugs. And then the last one is our kickstand switch. which is green, always green. Plug that in. So the way we run the kickstand wire is I'm going to take off this bracket and then we run it up our clutch switch here, whatever this wire is. We run it up right up against this without these brackets, obviously, right up there. And this, like I said, will be zip tied right into there. All these plugs will be up over the sprocket cover, like so, tucked in like that. We got to find a home for these relays. And we also have our hand control plugs. So now we're going to do the ignition. That's paired with all your hand control plugs, which is on right here. Flip this wiring to get it up. And the ignition is, where's my adapter? So we have a special adapter to run the Grom keyed ignition with the CBR wiring. We sell two different kinds, one for the Aracer ECU and one for your OEM ECU on the CBR, if that's what you're running, because the OEM ECU needs different signals and voltages. So just plugs in. We're going to run this, probably going to run it right here, like so, and then plug it into the ignition in the front. These are hand control plugs here. The two black ones are your left hand controls, and your gray or brown one is your right hand control. So we will run these up. Flip this back down. Now run them up. So our ignition. And like I said before, you'll be going through zip ties like crazy, because now we can cut this. Now that we have the ignition wire and hand control wires up front, we're going to re-zip tie this to hold all three here together. Still need to find a home for these relays. I'm probably going to stuff one right here. And then our turn signal relay, which is the biggest of them all, I'm probably going to run over here like that. Zip tie it down and throw the actual LED relay through the top. We'll zip tie all that together like this. It looks like a rat's nest, but it's not terribly too bad. There's actually a lot of room back here with your plastics, so it works out pretty good. But I still have all my accessories I'll wire. I'll do that off camera in a little bit. All right, so quick break. Let's go over what we've done. Looks like a mess, but that's because I have way more wiring than you will, so don't judge. But let's look. All right, so this is what we're working with here. We'll start in the front. So you saw that I got the front of the harness pushed right through here. So it's just barely sticking out. I've gone ahead and added our adapter. So this is to run your Grom dash adapter with your CBR harness. Plug and play. This is our Grom to CBR harness headlight adapter. So it's got your signals here, and then instead of the CBR, which is usually like 2H7s, this harness is literally like, comes out to here on a factory CBR, so much shorter and smaller to stuff behind your headlight. I convert it to an H4, so this is plug and play with the OGs, like the 2014 to 2015 Groms. 2017 to 20, the SFs, you need a special adapter to run the OEM headlight because it's LED and it runs all kinds of wacky voltages. And for the 22 and up, we also we build those headlights from scratch if you send your light in to make it plug and play and to work on 12 volts. Otherwise, it doesn't work on the CBR wiring. The 22 light and up is crazy how many switching grounds, and just it's a nightmare. But we do make it possible to run. So we got everything zip tied here. Our hand controls here, as you can see, they're just dangling. Our next step is we're going to do the handlebars so we can mount the wiring up. This is our fan. It's all zip tied in here pretty tight. The main harness is pretty much under the tank above the frame. I was able to mount the Aracer right against the harness. There's tons of room back here, so you can kind of come out to the edge of the tank. It's pretty much the limit. There's a lot of room to run wires. This is our AF2 power adapter that we sell for any Grom, CBR swap, whatever you want. I have to run the wires still, but it just taps into where the AF2 plugs in. So I got to run those wires. Let's go to the other side. These two plugs are our adapters. They are for the throttle body. This one we're not going to be using because we have a manual idle adjuster, but it's on the harness already. This is the throttle position sensor plug. Our coil plugged in here. You can ignore all these white plugs. These are for my switch power harness. You won't have these. You won't see them. Here's our AF2 O2 sensor plug. I still got to run the wires and tidy up the side. Starter relay fits perfectly right here. I will zip tie it to the tab that's back here. This is our CBR 2 Grom taillight adapter. You can ignore these red and black wires that go off. This goes to my switch power harness. But this harness right here makes it plug and play for your taillight, which we'll be installing so we can get that going, plugged in, tidy it up. Here's our taillight wiring. I've shortened this tremendously, so this is going to fit behind this brake reservoir, and all this will plug in, and our fuse box will pretty much mount right up in there. And that's pretty much it. Now for the moment of truth. If we wired everything up, it should work. I don't know if I went over our ignition adapter, so we can run our Grom ignition on the CBR harness. We turn this key. You should hear your fuel tank turn on. If you're running an OEM ECU, if you have the Aracer ignition adapter, this won't work. You need to have a diode, and we sell an OEM ignition adapter if you're running the OEM ignition or OEM ECU. So let's see what we get. Success. So harness is pretty much set. Like I said, I just got to tidy up all this wiring. The wiring part, besides our plug and play adapters, it really comes down to how you guys want to run your wiring. I see people run it on the right side of the bike. I see people run it where I ran it. I see people zigzag it without shortening the wiring. So it's how you lay your harness is whatever way you want to do it. This is just the way I do it. I go down the left side. And like I said, I start at the rectifier and then run it up to get to the headlight and make that where I need it. And then I kind of shorten it and push it around and zip tie it up that way to make it easier. But I am going to go tidy up the rest of this wiring. When we come back, we're going to start doing the handlebars so we can get the hand controls mounted up there and make life a little easier and a little cleaner. So we're going to remove the entire handlebar assembly, our front brake setup, even our bar clamps, because we have some nice PSD solid mount clamps to put on. And before we take our bars all the way off, we got to take off the nuts that are holding our clamps on, which are 14 millimeter. Take these out. They will come off with the little rubbers. Now we're going to take our new bar risers, bar clamps and risers. These are PSDs. These are what I only run on all my Groms, soon to be Supermoto CRFs. They're solid mounted, so the rubber bushings aren't in there anymore, so there's no flex give feel that you get, it feels way better. And these also give you a little rise over the stock ones, and they look way better. So we're just going to mount these up. There's little rubbers underneath the triple tree. We'll leave those in just so the washer has something to sit on, but the tops are solid mounted. You don't have to use these. I do. So let's mount these up. So the way these are mounted is you'll see the center of this bottom part, the front or the rear of it is longer. That goes on the back side of the triple tree. So this part will vary for most people because I run Aracer gauge up here. For the bars, we're using the Pro Tapers KLX 110s, which are going to mount right in here. Then the PSD mount goes on top of your bars, obviously, like so. But then I also run, a top mount Aracer gauge for my AFR. So obviously some people won't have this. You might even run your stock bars. But I'm going to be going with this setup. This involves a little spacer and longer bolts, but it gets the job done. And I don't have to run the app. We want to adjust this where we need it, which is, I usually run it parallel to the way the angles of the forks, and then forward just a little bit. Make sure you drill your bars. Don't be that guy, because there's a little spot to go in that locks your bars, your controls on your bars. All right, now we're going to run our cable. This is for the right hand. For the right hand, I tuck it right behind the ignition here to get the most amount of wire I can to the other side. And then that will plug in there. Our right hand or left hand one here is we're going to snake it down through here. And then there's a little bracket here. We're going to go behind that bracket backwards to get over there. Our ignition and our dash wire we'll just kind of stuff in here. We'll worry about these wires more when we do the headlight. So now you can see where we plug all this in here. So we'll start with our left one, or right one, which is the brown one. Like that. Again, it's going to get stuffed behind the headlight here, so you're not going to see it. And then here is our right hand switch with our plugs right here. Plug that in. Again, this one will also be stuffed behind the headlight. Since we're running the Tremere LP9, I presume there's going to be tons of space back here. So running this wire back here will be easy. If you're running the stock headlight or a round light, it may be easier for your right hand controls to run it down the frame this way and over under the tank. And then you can keep your connections back here for your controls. I make extended wiring adapters for your controls. So, I mean, you can even run your control plug all the way to your taillight if you wanted to. But to make it easier, you can run them back under the tank here if you need those adapters. Those are going to be stuffed back there. And once we get the radiator on, we'll do the fork lock check to make sure all the wires aren't pinched and whatnot. So now we'll do the dash. This is our CBR to 22 plus dash adapter. It just simply plugs in under here, just like that. And that will stuff back here. Just be careful pulling these wires. These wires are tiny. Try not to, you know, yank them. There. Our signal wires, we make adapters to go from stock to your bullet connectors. Most aftermarkets will already have these bullet connectors, and most people run bullet connect or aftermarket lights like TST. So we just make the option. People like me, I run these as switchbacks. So this is a clear smoked lens and white with orange ambers or orange signals. But with the CBRs, the way the wiring is, I don't get the white, but I still run the smoke signals with an orange bulb inside. Whip these up real quick, plug these in. And then these obviously plug into here. You'll need to trial and error which ones are left, which ones are right, but obviously black goes to black, blue goes to red, vice versa, black to black, and yellow to red. And then just turn your bike on and check them. First try. Make sure none of the metal is exposed, and then this gets tucked up in your headlight area however you see fit. And then all we're left with up front is our headlight plug, which, like I said, we'll do that when we do our headlight. Now we're going to tackle the taillight and everything back there. Fender eliminator, get all that tidied up. We got to snap this in and put the taillight in. And for the taillight, we're using a Blaster X. Only the best. So now we'll run our wires, same as factory. So these are our signals. I'm going to extend these wires to reach the harness. This is the switch on the blaster, so you can change the modes. There's all kinds of different flashing modes you can use. Stuff that in there for now. Run our OEM wire down here. And we're going to take our CBR adapter, plug it in. And then on our CBR adapter, that's plug and play. This red and black wire here, this is not included with it. That's just extra for my switch power source, but you're going to plug in this 2-pin plug into this. And then it's going to have a extra wire. This plugs into the brown wire on the CBR harness. This is your running light. All right, made a little harness here. Now we will plug it in. Like I said before, blue and orange are your signals. That's plugged in. Now you tell me if it works. Move you over here. Alright, so we got the taillight mounted, we got the wires run. I run it along this channel here. As you can tell, I'm zip tie happy. Keep it all tidy. I kind of cleaned up this a little bit. This fuse box is going to mount right in there when the plastics are on. A good way to gauge the space you have is these brackets here. This is where that triangle plastic fits, so all this space in here is free real estate for wiring if you need to. Again, ignore these white plugs. You won't have this unless you're running this switch power relay harness that I run. But she's coming along. I have a fender eliminator. In my state, we get stopped if we don't have plate lights. So we're going to run this. This is just a cheapy Amazon one. They all work the same. Check out those Crocs. So we're going to mount this up here. Obviously, goes right there. and then we'll run the wires around the other side down, and I'll show you where they plug in. Undertail has an opening to run your wire. So just run that up for now without dropping it. The bolts I run, I just went to the hardware store. They're M6 by 20 with a 1.0 thread pitch with a washer and a flange nut. So we're just gonna bolt that right up there, right in the factory holes that the fender came off of. All right, so now that that's mounted here, perfect. We're gonna run the wire. You can see it comes up right through the hole there. Underneath the seat latch, we're gonna run it under the frame, and we're just gonna zip tie it along here. And it's gonna plug into the green wire, and then that brown wire. That brown wire is what's running our running light for the taillight. It's got a 2 slot for bullet connectors, so the other side is gonna be to run our license plate light. Now you can tell me if it turns on. Perfect. Alright, taillight's done. You saw that. Alright, now that with that we're done with the taillight area, I went ahead and ran a few more wires. So the wires for my Aracer DJ1 gauge I ran, the 4-to-1 harness, that's all plugged in, wired up. This is going to sit here eventually, but I still got to do the rear suspension, so I need to get to that bolt. So just pretend that it's nice and neat tucked in there. So like I said on the other side, these 2 bolts holes here are for that side panel, the triangle panel. This is all free real estate in here, so you could stuff a lot of shit that you need to hide in here. So that's what we're going to do with all our Aracer wiring once we do the suspension. But one of the last things we got to do is, this is my speed healer. I'm not running a CoSo dash like I did on my other Groms. I don't even think they make a mount for this, but I like this, the 22 and up dashes, so we're just going to run that. This just plugs into your speed sensor, and this little unit we'll just have it sit in the trunk area up here, so we can adjust on the fly. It's almost accurate from my last swap, but not perfect, so we'll go over that when the time comes. First we need to run it, which I'm just going to run it behind all these wires up through here. Like I said, into the trunk. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And like I said, when the time comes, all this will be zip tied nice and neat up in here, away from everything, away from the suspension, away from any moving parts. And this will sit just in here. Make sure you get the CBR speed healer and not the 22 and up Grom, obviously, because we're using nothing electronic that's 22 and up Grom. All right, so that is pretty much it for all the wiring. I mean, we got the dash working here. Dash works, fuel gauge works, neutral light works. We can hear the fuel pump. Fuel pump works. AF2 lights up. You can see it blinking there. Mini Racer or Mini X lights up there. Everything is pretty much done for wiring. We're pretty much ready to start this thing, but we're not gonna yet. I went over our dash plug here, plug and play, our harness for our headlight here, our signal controls, our ignition adapter, adapters for your throttle body. We have adapters for everything. We have adapters for your coolant sensor, obviously your tail light, your license plate light, fuel pump. So we have all the adapters covered. If you guys want to have plug-and-play adapters, it makes it super easy to do instead of cutting and splicing and trying to figure out all the connections. We'll do the throttle cables in another video. Injector is good. It's pretty much everything. Relays tucked away. Like I said before, this is where I like to mount my rectifier. Some people mount it on the other side. It's up to you how you want to run your wiring. I just make the connection so you can run Grom stuff easier for you. That's it. That's all for this wiring video. This is probably the worst video I have ever made. I struggle making wiring videos because I just keep going and forget I'm recording or talking or whatnot. So I hope this helps. If you have questions on wiring, just shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'll be happy to help you. There's just so many different variants of these harnesses that it's crazy and it gets confusing way easy. But I try to make it easy with my adapters. So if you have questions, just ask. She's starting to look like a motorcycle again, which is nice. We still got to do the brakes front and rear, the suspension front and rear. New rims are going on. And we got to do all the throttle body stuff on the other side. We got to do the no-cut elbow. And run our cables, obviously, our clutch cable as well. But that is it. I'll have everything linked in the description. And I hope this helps you guys. So until the next time when this video, I don't even know when this video will go up because my vacation ends today. I go back to work tomorrow. So I don't know how long this is going to take to edit. Probably forever. But parts, all the other parts for this episode are linked down below. There's a playlist that has everything here. For this Grom specifically, but I have a playlist for an SF OG swap that I've already done. This one's more detailed. The only real difference is obviously the frame gets cut and welded, but besides that, it's all the same. So, until next time, everyone, I will see you in the next video. Later.